Good morning, everybody. I would like to begin with the quote first. The quote says, I have decided that the only way to live is to embrace grief. For grief only exists where love lived first. This is a quote by Franchesca Cox. And this quote actually encapsulates my next speaker's state of mind. I have spoken to Deepa a few times over the phone and I've met her a couple of times. And what I can say about her is that she is there's a lot of gentleness in her. There's a very strong sense of intuition. And honestly, I haven't met a kinder person in my life before. And a little background is that she lost her son, Praveer, about 2 decades ago. Now, today she's here to share her story about how she coped over 22 years and how did she cope with grief, what were her learnings, and what can she tell the world with people who are probably suffering from the same thing in their life. Then what is it that you can learn from Deepa? So on that note, Deepa, thank you so much. It really means a lot. Thank you for coming. Maybe just give a round of applause. It takes a lot of courage for all my speakers actually to come here. So thank you for coming, Deepa. And may I request you to face the camera and maybe begin with your quick brief message to the world before we begin.
So first of all, Kanika, thanks a lot for thinking of me to talk about this, because grief is such a taboo topic in our culture.
Yeah.
And we don't talk about it as often as we should, but I think that it is very important because grief can, take you to the depths of despair, but it can also empower you when you process the entire grief process. It can empower you to change the way you look at things, and it also changes your personality in a way where you start noticing things around you, and you think that you have a lot of difference to make to the community by talking about it. And that's why I choose to talk about it, because you do not want someone else who's going through the grief journey to feel that they're alone.
Yeah.
And the more you talk about it, the more you reach out to them. So that's my way of talking about it. That's the reason for me to talk about my grief journey.
And thank you for being the person who talks about it, because I come from the exact same school of thought, which is why this platform. Because that's what I always say, and I believe it, is that the more you talk about your suffering, I'm not saying suffering is going to go, but it at least reduces. And if you keep it to yourself, then it magnifies.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
I come from the same school of thought. On that note, Deepa, just like however much you want to speak about Praveer, how he was as a person, and whatever it is that you want to share, so that we lay a ground and then we can move ahead.
Sure. So Praveer was born on July 5th in 1996 in a small town in Tennessee, and for the 3.5 years that he lived, our life revolved around him. There was nothing else in our life other than Praveer, and everything was going normally until he was about 2 years old, and he stopped. His appetite came down drastically, and I used to tell the doctor every time we went for the checkup that there is something that's not wrong. He's not eating, and he brushed it aside, saying that that's normal toddler behavior. But something inside both of us realized that there was something that was not actually all right. And a couple of times he would get up at night in cold sweat and he would be crying. And one thing led to another. And there was a point in time when my husband had gone for a training out of town, and Praveer fell sick really badly, and he was sleeping all the time, and that wasn't a good sign. And so I called him back, from wherever he was. We went to the doctor, we went to the ER, and the test revealed that he was severely anemic. And they gave him medication to deal with the anemia. 2 weeks later, again, it started repeating itself. The same thing started repeating. and we decided that we'd go to the ER again. And at that time, the ER said that, we've tried everything we could. I think this is beyond our scope of treatment. So they sent us to a children's hospital in Dallas, and that's where we went. And our world crashed because we came to know that he had a very rare form of cancer called neuroblastoma, which affects kids under 5, and it's usually diagnosed by the time kids are 2, and by the time it's diagnosed, it's already spread and it's kind of very hard to cure. And most of the times it goes undiagnosed. And so we started the treatment even though we knew that the odds were stacked against him. And I think the treatment continued for a while. It had a lot of ups and downs, but the one thing that Praveer did was that he was also very intuitive. So the first time when he realized, when he had his chemo, he realized that he cannot hold the food down. From the second time on, he wouldn't eat as long as he was in the hospital. And there was a lot of learning to learn from him, because he never complained. Even though he was 2 years old, he didn't complain. He took it like a saint, and he was usually smiling and a happy child, except that he hated hospitals. So when he was in the hospital, he was very miserable. So but I think once it came back, there was nothing much that could be done, and we decided to keep him home because he hated hospitals, and he passed away at home.
Okay. I'm really sorry. I know it was
It's okay. It's okay.
Damn it, I'm so sorry again.
That's okay.
I know it was really long. Shit. I told myself I won't do this again.
It's okay.
Sorry. I'm sorry. This was a long time ago.
Yeah.
How were you feeling then? Like, and you you keep talking about that he was an amazing human being, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you mentioned something called the dignity of death.
Yes.
Let's talk about that, please, because that hit me really hard. In terms of hard, not in a negative way, in the most powerful way. A mother talking like that, giving dignity of death to her own child. Please talk about it. What does that mean? What does that mean?
So, every time, this is something that my husband said to me when we had led with a loss. And to be honest, we handled it together. And even though the grief journey is a separate journey, we would not be along in this journey without him, without each other. So he said that, let us make a conscious decision to remember only the good times, not the hospitalizations, not what he went through during the hospitalization, and because what happens is, when you concentrate on only the illness, and when you concentrate only on the hospitalizations and all, you override a lifetime of memories that are actually good as well. So even despite him being a sick child, we did normal things with him. We took him to Taco Bell, we took him to McDonald's, he went to the park to play with his friends. So there were a lot of good memories, and he was really loved and well nourished, not just by the two of us, but by a lot of other people.
That's nice.
So that was the one thing that we took a conscious decision to remember, that we will remember only the good times, and we will concentrate only on the good times.
And that was a combined decision?
That was a combined decision, yeah.
Okay, that's really great to know. And so one main question, like when all this was going on, and when the worst possible or whatever had to happen, I will not say worst or good in this case, because that's, we label it like that. I mean, things happen, they have to happen in a certain way. What were you going through then? When was the time when you found yourself again? Because I remember you telling me I was Nam Kanika, and I was just doing it.
Yeah.
When did it hit you in whatever way, and how did you have a support system?
So initially, I think for me at least personally, the worst day was when I came to know he had cancer. Okay, more than when we knew that he was terminally ill later on after the treatment, because we weren't expecting that. The reason we weren't expecting that, and the reason why the terminal illness was a little easier to handle, was the fact that despite us being in denial about it, we knew in our minds that, you know, this is something that is gone beyond treatment, and we have to make whatever we make of the last few days. And the last few days were actually quite difficult, because you know that he's not going to be around in a couple of months or whatever. For us it was 3 weeks. But you know, our only concern at that point in time was to make him happy, and he was a very, you know, emotionally nourished child, not only from us but from also the community. For example, like I told you, right, when we were in the hospital, and the first time that he got diagnosed, my husband had just started working in a company, and there were people we didn't know who sent us like toys, and the room was just filled with the toys and the gifts that he got.
That's amazing.
And
That's nice.
and these are people that I don't know.
Yeah,
and I had a lot of support from our friends in Dallas, who actually, you know, when we had to go back home after the first round of treatment, they needed to sanitize the house, and there were friends of mine who took care of everything there, you know, getting the carpet cleaning done, including doing our laundry.
Wow.
To make sure, you know, so I was really blessed that I had an amazing support system, and he had an amazing support system. And you know, we had friends drop by to see Praveer, you know, when he was during the treatment, and also we never felt alone. We never felt like my mom was there, my brother was there, my bhabhi was there, his parents were there. So we never felt that we were in this journey alone. It was that power of the community actually that helped us out.
Thank God for that. Really.
Really. I mean,
I'm also very thankful that you were not alone.
Yeah.
You know. So, can you mention about that idli wala incident?
Yeah. So
that was really sweet.
That was very sweet, and I still get the goosebumps when I think about it. So you know, cancer patients in America have this for pain alleviation, so that they don't have to be pricked again, especially the smaller children. They put a line on the chest through which, you know, they put the medications and all. So one of his lines had got contaminated, so we had to get another line put in. And there was this lady from Kerala, Umana Ibrahim, and she was handling Praveer that day. We got talking, since we were both from India, and you know, we were just talking about our life, and life in India and life in America, and how I was coping. And what she actually did the next day was really touching, because I have met her before, and I was not likely to meet her again after the entire treatment process was over. The next morning at 8 o'clock, she gets me piping hot idlis and sambar, and those are the kinds of things that I like to concentrate on.
Her,
I mean, I seriously will never forget.
I hope you're listening. I wish one day this reaches you, but thank you for doing this for them that time. I mean,
and she realized that I was a vegetarian, and there was not many vegetarian options available in the cafeteria, and there were a lot of other people like that, you know, who really took care of us so well despite not knowing us. And I think both Seshu and I like to concentrate on that aspect rather than concentrating on something negative, like at that point in time.
That is really it's superhuman in a way. I feel that's my opinion, and which is why I said that you are a very strong and a kind person together. It's a very interesting combination.
I think it was very collective. We both think alike. It's very collective.
I mean, I have spoken to her, but when I say that, I mean both of you. I just take it like hands down. It has to be the both of you.
Yeah.
That's just how it operates. So let's now talk about, let's move ahead, move on beyond that. You then conceived. You have 2 children today.
Yeah.
My question here, a very curious question, is that typically wo hota hai na, that once bitten twice shy, you had your fingers burned, and these are very lame ways of saying it, but for the lack of better sentences. How did you feel the first time you conceived? Did you have any fear? Or were you like trusting? What was going through in your head?
So I conceived soon. I was pregnant around the time that Praveer passed on, and I lost the baby in the 10th week of pregnancy, and it was one of the most painful miscarriages, and that's the only miscarriage I had, but it was a very painful thing. But at that point in time, I think I was not ready to be a mom yet again. I was just processing the grief, and though I was not internally very happy with the pregnancy, to be honest. And so I think everything happens for a reason.
It always
and
is,
it was not a viable pregnancy. Then we took a little time to have a baby later on. This happened in April of Praveer passed away in January of 2000. This happened in March, April 2000, and I conceived again in April of next year. Okay. And it was a very tense time for me because A, because of I'd lost Praveer, and B, because of the fact that I'd had a miscarriage. So until 12 weeks I was on tenterhooks because I did, though my friends did know that I was pregnant, but until actually I passed the 12 weeks, I could not really be comfortable that this would carry through the entire 9 months. And it was a difficult pregnancy as well because I was on bed rest in the last 6 weeks of pregnancy because the baby was not getting I was not gaining weight, and neither was the baby gaining weight. But once I had her, my world again sort of started coming together. Our world again started coming together, and we started rebuilding our lives, sort of moving along with the flow. But there is one thing that still bothers me up to date, and I'm just saying it because the thought just crossed me. So when people ask me how many children do I have, I easily say 2, but in actuality we've had 3 children, and somewhere that kind of makes me feel a little guilty because I feel like am I denying Praveer's existence in my life? But the reason I don't say that is because I don't know how people around me are going to perceive that, and that's why this topic comes in handy for your voice of silence.
Yes.
Because we are choosing to not talk about a person who was a major part of our life for 3 years, but are we denying his existence? So that's one lesson I learned from that was, don't ask people how many kids they have, don't ask them are you married or when are you planning to get married or anything, because you have no idea what
background
what their background is and what they're going through in their life. So that was one lesson that I learned from this whole thing. But this whole situation, then I had another son. That pregnancy was very smooth again until the last trimester, but he's here today, and once he came and our family was complete in a way that we started coping with our life, mainly because we had 2 young kids to take care of. We had a lot of things going on for us because we were in the US and everything had to be done by us. So I don't really think we processed our grief around that time. I don't think I really processed my grief
it's
at
like you
all.
lock it.
You lock it.
I'll deal with you or not. I've locked you separately. Is that how you?
And then what happens is when you do that, it affects your mental framework
everything.
A lot. And grief is not just about being low or sad. Grief manifests itself in a lot of different ways.
Which would you like to mention?
Yes. So grief is not just about feeling sad. Grief is about wasting your time in trivial pursuits. Trying to fill out that emptiness. Or grief is also about getting irritated at small things, and I've done that. I've been guilty of doing that with my family because at the end of the day, they are my only venting out options, right? I can't vent out on people outside. So getting angry, getting irritated over little things. And it's only until about 2 years ago when I started meditating that it's taken me about 1.5 years now and probably 6 months where I've actually now learned to let go and where I've actually learned not to get affected by things as much around me, because I used to get anxiety attacks if I couldn't find a key. I would get anxiety attacks if my son or my daughter were not studying or not listening to me, or my husband was not listening to me. I still get anxiety attacks if they're out late in the night,
And one question here, Deepa, is that the commonality between us is that we both are mothers.
Yes.
The commonality between us and all mothers here is the anxiety or whatever we call that little thing about our kids. I want to ask you, and this I always had a question in my mind about humans in general, even about myself. How do we know, is this grief that is manifesting, or in general I'm being worried because I was gone through a bit, and I also keep questioning, is that manifesting, or is it because then I see mothers who, touch wood, have not gone through anything of that sort, they are acting in the same way. How do you distinguish?
So I think that's a lot of mindfulness that you have to practice. So
you also sit with your thoughts and
I sit with your thoughts, I meditate and comb through them. What happens is when you meditate, right, what happens is that you start correcting yourself after a point in time. It takes a long time to get there. It's not like it happens instantly. It takes about a year and a half of practice to actually start collecting your thoughts. Yeah. You know, there are times when I would just dash off a note if I was angry, that, you know, how could you do this and how could you do that? Now I control myself. I said, okay, no, it's not. And the other thing that I've also learned in this grief journey is you cannot control how others are going to react to you. You can only control how you react, and that has only happened in the last 6 months, I should say, or probably the last few months, because of, you know, the constant routine of, you know, doing jap, doing meditating, that gratitude that you have towards people. Gratitude I've always had. I've always been grateful even for the little things in my life.
Yeah, that's coming out strongly anyhow.
Yeah.
I mean, the way you addressed the whole event, you can make out. But just one thing before we move ahead, just backing up a little to that place where you said, I mentioned too, but I feel guilty about not mentioning Praveer. I remember you talking about this clearly with me, saying that, Kanika, I don't want to, I see that people start sympathizing with me. And at the same time, I don't want to not acknowledge him. So it's a little bit of a double whammy kind of a thing.
Yes, it's a blur. It's a blur.
Like, where do I mention? If I mention, then they'll talk about, I mean, see, it's natural human behavior, right? So at this point, would you also like to address the crowd and the camera that, let's say you say that this has happened to me. What would you like them to, in return, say, which doesn't look like sympathy, maybe just educate. I'm at a loss here. So, how can you educate people from your side? It's just Deepa's point of view.
So I'll tell you, there are a lot of times when people come and tell you, when you're going to visit somebody who's lost their spouse or lost their child, you just go and you say, you know, ye karma hai, it's your karma, or you say a lot of things that unke saath bhi aisa hua, inke saath bhi aisa hua. You don't want that. You want, you know, the person is already having a lot of confidence, you know, lack of confidence that they've lost, and they also have lost their self-worth. And when you go and tell them that, you know, this is what happened and this is your karma, you start feeling that, God, you know, am I such a bad person that such a thing happened to me? At those times, it's more important to be present by just being there. Just hold hands, just hug, just listen to them vent out. Don't offer any advice because you do not have any idea of what it is like. And it's strange, but there are times when people, most of the people who have been through grief, realize it, but a lot of the people are still processing their own grief, so they also judge people who are grieving. And I want to tell people that there is no right way or no wrong way to grieve. It's all individual, it's all internal, and let's not judge them because we do not know what it is like and what are the emotions that they are going through, you know, in their minds. So it's like very important to just be present, just make sure that they know you're there for them. Listen to them, just be with them, call them. You know, grief is a very funny, I mean, for a lack of a better word, a very funny thing. You want to be left alone. At the same time, it's that time in your life.
It's the funniest emotion.
You need someone to be there with you. I mean, there are people I know who are so vitriolic to the people around them. But it's their grief that's manifesting itself, and we need to understand that it's not them, it's their grief that is talking. And all the more reason that you need to don't send them anything. My friend lost her husband. She is my age, but her kids are only 6 years old. She lost her husband 2 months back, you know, and she's lost. But couple of her friends, right, we just send her messages every day, even if they don't respond, they just need to know that you're there for them.
Yeah.
And that is very important because you need to be present. Don't joke around. Don't, act like everything is normal. Just be there.
Thank you, Deepa. Thank you for this. And I remember us having a conversation around this about Indians. And I will say this on camera, I'm an Indian and a very proud Indian at that. But Indians have an issue dealing with emotions as much as we might make Bollywood movies and all of that. But I agree with her completely when it comes to talking about emotions. You're labeled weak. You're labeled weak. It's a sign of weakness if you're emotional. If you're crying, if a man is crying, God forbid, oh
yes.
my God, that's like sacrilege of sorts. And if a woman is crying, lashing out, angry, frustrated, औरत ही है तो ये है वो है औरत and this that. I learned this from I've always felt it, but Deepa said it out. You said it out that day that you're coming from the US, and this is not about US against India, nothing like that. What I'm saying is that maybe as Indians we need to sit up and start looking after our emotions, because that's what builds us inside out. All of the other things are manifestations. People are running behind money. That's again another distraction, isn't it?
That's another distraction.
It's a distraction.
Yeah. It's a distraction.
It's a distraction. It's still being powered by an emotion somewhere. So please, can you speak a little more about it, especially when you came back to India? You came back to India. Please tell us about that journey and the emotional disconnect, or what was it like when you came back?
So one thing that I've noticed that is different in the education system here and the education system in the US, because my son started his schooling here, and my daughter started her schooling in the US. They encourage you to identify emotions from a very young age, and in India, I don't know whether we're not able to vocalize what or how we are feeling. We are not able to verbalize it. A child, there are different kinds of anger. Anger comes from grief, anger comes from sadness, anger comes from frustration.
Yes.
And that's something that we've not learned to distinguish. And that's one thing that, I started reading books. I've always been a reader, and maybe that's why I've always been a little more nuanced in giving
the subtleties of things.
But the thing is that what I've noticed is that people don't talk about emotions in India. People don't talk about how you feel.
Why do you think that is?
I think it's the culture. You always want to project yourself as someone who's very strong
victorious,
and who's victorious and stoic.
Stoic, content, fulfilled.
Yeah.
I wish this breaks. I wish we all get vulnerable. Yeah, like how? Like
People,
vulnerable.
There's also the fear of being judged. If you're
Exactly.
That's very old back.
And why is that there then?
So,
why do people judge us? What is this thing like? You are lesser than me. ये यहाँ क्यों है? I really need to understand this.
I'll tell you why I choose to be silent for a little while. I cut myself off from people. It was about 5 years back. I was in a group of friends who were all from my community itself, and I thought they were friends. And I used to talk about Praveer, and I used to send we have a ritual in our house where on Praveer's birthday, a few years back, my kids thought about it. We light a candle in front of his picture and we actually cut a cake.
That's so sweet.
And when I shared this picture with those group of people, they weren't comfortable with it. And
in terms of?
I think they don't like people talking about, they found it weird. They found that ye ajeeb hai, and I'm pretty sure they judge me as being a weird person. And I, honestly, at that point in time, it hurt. But now I don't care.
But we've not spoken about it. Did they say something like this?
Yeah. I came to know. You come to know when you just come to know. You should move on. You should move on. You have 2 other kids. You should move on. I can tell you one thing for sure. In these 22 years, what I have learned is you can let go, but you cannot move on. Because there are days when you feel that, one thing that again I must compliment my husband and myself also, we're both very proud of that fact, is that we don't have any bitterness to Praveer, to seeing the milestones that Praveer's friends and people Praveer's age are, achieving.
Yeah.
never had that
Like
bitterness.
marriages or college.
Never had that. I've never had that bitterness, and so I don't understand where we, where.
You were talking about moving on and letting go.
So moving on, you will never be able to move on, because there are days when you feel like, "Arey, ab Praveer hota," something reminds you that if Praveer hota, he would be in a relationship. Maybe he would have been married. You never know. He would have been. He would have been 26 this year, and somewhere वो कभी-कभी खलता है. I don't feel bitter about it. I don't.
I know what you mean.
Begrudge
Yes.
other people their happiness, but if only it's there. So it's a lifelong journey, and I think both my husband and I have embraced it as a lifelong companion, because we have no other choice.
No, that's a big learning. That there is a difference between. It's a really big learning for me also. That I think my husband personifies it. The whole moving on and letting go are two different things. I still have to learn that, but thank you for saying this. This is a very. It's tough to understand though. It can be misconstrued as the same thing.
It's
right?
not. There's a nuance.
There is actually, now that you're saying it. So that's nice. That's very nice. So so now you came back to India, and you are in love with Gurgaon.
Yes.
Please tell us why. So yeah, a lot of us have very quizzical expressions on our face. So we need to be introduced to this side, and we are happy. Please tell us.
So it's when I came to India, and I had a lot of free
And this
time.
was when
This
did
was
you-
in 2007.
Seven.
And I had 2 young kids, and I had all the help in the world. I didn't have to drive. I didn't have to, do my dishes or do the chores and everything. And I had a lot of time when the kids were in school to do things that I wanted. And I think at that point I was still processing my grief. So I was trying out different things. I did content writing for SOS Children's Villages, because a very dear friend of mine, she noticed that I was good at writing, and she said, "Why don't you do some report writing for us?" So I did that for a while, and I did that until they outsourced it to a centralized company, because it makes more sense for them to do it that way, right? And that led to another thing. My cousin had been posted in Delhi, and he was heading the regiment that was the
The
president's bodyguards. So I went to Delhi cantonment, and I taught the Jawans' wives conversational English, and that went on for a couple of years, and I enjoyed that, and I realized that I love volunteering, and that gives me a lot of satisfaction, because it's my way of paying back to the community what I had received in the US. Like I was telling you, I forgot to mention this. Praveer had not made a wish. Then they reminded us that Praveer had not made a wish. And the one wish that we made was that, he loved Thomas the Tank Engine. And we said that he likes Thomas the Tank Engine thing, so why don't, you get him something related to Thomas the Tank Engine. And there were 2 nurses who used to work in hospitals. After work, they coordinated with us, and they found out all the things that Praveer liked and all the things that Praveer didn't already have, and they came and they fulfilled Praveer's wish. And I still have the letter that they sent to us after Praveer passed on. I don't read it because it affects me mentally, but it was just a thing that we realized that it was a wish that meant a lot to the child, and you were not manifesting your wish. They told me that you were not manifesting your wish onto them, and it was something that the child genuinely wanted. And that's when I realized that I will, if I can make a difference in someone's life, I will do that. I don't, it would be great if I worked, but I don't think I'm cut out for that.
But you are working, no? With this volunteering.
I'm doing, I do this. I volunteer, but not in the conventional
That's
sense.
okay. Work is work.
And that's when I realized that I want to volunteer,
like this.
and I've done a lot of things around. I've helped one of the NGOs write develop their web page content, and now I've gone one step further. I said, instead of aligning myself with one organization or one thing, what I do is, whenever I see something on Gurgaon Moms, which is again a very powerful forum, because a lot of people come up with their things, so I speak out on neurodiversity, and I speak out on child loss or grief, because I realize that you're judging people from your moral compass or your compass of, your emotional compass. and that is something that is very wrong. So I always reach out to moms who've lost their children, and I've made some very good friends because of a certain tweet somebody did, because they tagged me and another friend who had lost a child, and I've met a lot of people around who have been in the same journey as I have.
This is the group that you're speaking
Yeah,
about?
I am part of 2 groups. One is Help Parents Seal India, and I just joined that recently. But the other group, I have a friend who lost her daughter to dengue. She was 19 years old, and before that I just sent her a friend request and she accepted it, and it was a very random thing. The early days of Gurgaon moms, and I would never do that at that point in time, and neither would she accept random requests, but somehow we connected. I didn't know anything about her past, neither did she know anything about my past. One day I noticed a picture of a girl with a candle lit in front of her, and I realized immediately that she's going through the same journey that I am. Let me reach out to her. And I sent her an inbox, and I said, hugs from a mom who understands. And there began our conversation, and she said, would you like to be part of a support group? And at that point in time, I was a little hesitant, because honestly I believed that I had gone beyond that. But little was I to know that I was wrong. I joined the support group, and that's when I realized how much I had held back, how much of my grief was silent. There I made a lot of friends. We talk about our grief, and we meet, we go on vacations. The grief is usually when when someone is down, someone else props them up. And we make sure that if there's those of us in Gurgaon, for example, if my friend is reading a poem somewhere, I'll make sure that I'm there for that event. Or if it's online, we make sure that we are there for each other, no matter what. And that group has helped me cope with my grief in a way that only talking to peers can, right? When I'm talking about my insecurities, they're not judging me. They are understanding. And I'm probably voicing out their emotions that they are also processing, and they are voicing out emotions that I may not have thought about, but that means a lot to me.
It's amazing.
It's
amazing.
I cannot.
It's like you're talking like a jigsaw puzzle, like
Exactly,
sometimes you may
putting
have gaps
yes.
which you are not aware of.
Yes.
And then they say, there could be a gap, and then you suddenly become aware of it, and they fill it up for you, so you become a fuller person.
Mm-hmm.
So thank God for the group. And I don't know, I've said this before, somebody else, another speaker had said this, long back about a group.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's just me, but I feel, I'm again going to repeat what I said to her. I wish there were no groups. I wish everybody understood. I know it's utopian, but
won't.
I wish you
They
find more people that have not maybe. Yes, I get it that maybe even me sitting here, or anybody for that matter, who's a little more empathetic, will not go through or understand. But I wish people did not at least judge.
That's one thing. People judge. Even we judge. I mean,
Yes, we do.
Despite
Kuch
trying
bhi
to
kar lo.
evolve every day, we judge
We
too,
do,
right?
we do.
Huh.
I wish that would change, or forget the judgment. Judgment, I think judgment is a word which बेचारे को बुरा नाम दे दिया गया है. I think it's how you act after the judgment. That I think, at least I have a problem with. Judgment is something you need to survive. But एक होता है ना, ये I will not take your example. Anything else, judge. And then, okay, now we are not going to talk, or let's not hobnob with that person. That action is what I have a problem with.
So a lot of my friends in the and look, I truly consider myself very lucky that I had a strong support system. Not everyone in the support group had that. Okay, not everyone. And there are some people in whose family, my friend lost a daughter, and 2 months later they're celebrating a 50th birthday party. And they're expecting her to come. I mean, I understand, but that loss is also your loss, right? That girl was also your girl. While I understand you're wanting to celebrate that, I also want people to understand that maybe that could have been deferred a couple of months more, later to make that family not feel isolated. The family feels very isolated कि सब लोग celebrate कर रहे हैं और हम यहाँ पे it's as if we are the only ones who've lost a part of our lives.
Oh, that's not a nice place.
That's not nice.
That's not nice. That alone wala place is not nice.
That's not nice. That's not nice.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then there are others in the support group we reach out to on a regular basis, but they do not respond in kind. They are like, I can't understand how, for example, we laugh, we enjoy life. When we meet together, some outsider will not realize what has actually got us together.
Yeah.
We are having fun, we're clicking pictures, we're having meaningful conversations as well. But, at the heart of it, it's a tragedy that drew us all together.
Yeah.
Right? But people will not understand. And sometimes even people who've been on the same journey cannot understand.
That's a little bit of an irony, no?
That's a little bit of an irony. And the other the paradox is that grief, you want to be left alone, but at the same time, that's when you want to be. Yeah, you want to. Yeah.
This has been. Thanks, Deepa. Thank you so much, and all my love to you and your family members.
Thank you.
And just saying something here that I know we brought Deepa here, but it is, again, I'm repeating, it is a family journey, and nobody walks alone. So this one goes out to all three of you. I know Stuti's not here, but just all our love to all of you, and wish you the best in life.
Thank you.
And Deepa, we've come to the close of the session. Here's your chance to again look at the camera, and whatever it is, as a person, as a woman, as a mother, as a person who has, thank God, dealt with her grief to a larger extent. I'm nobody to say that, but through your own words. What is it that you would like to say, to the world who've not been through this, also to people who may be going through it, God forbid, but what would you like to say to the world? This is your moment.
Like I told you, grief can take you to the depths of despair, like it did to us. But in the process of processing grief, it's also very empowering. For example, I'm very, very conscious of being in the limelight, and here I am 22 years later talking about my journey. And what some of us wish is that what I have learned from my support group is that I wish someone we knew, in our circle, talked about our child, as it keeps his memory alive. Not only with us the memory is alive, but it keeps the memory alive even in the world, right, in a way. And that is one thing that is common. A lot of the parents feel that there are some of us who are very lucky that way, because people reach out to us saying, that, hey, I saw this today and I thought of Praveer. I have quite a few.
Because they've been there.
They've been there.
Yeah.
And like I told you one more that I forgot to mention, and I was supposed to talk about it. Yeah.
The lady.
So when Praveer was supposed to, would have been 21, I wished desperately that I had someone with me to share that day with, other than the two of us, who knew who Praveer was, who had seen Praveer, who had played with him. And this thought came to me on July 3rd. And that night, a very close friend of mine, her name is also Deepa, and she was like a second mom to Praveer. She sent me a message that I've missed my plane because in London, and instead of flying via Bombay, I'm going to be in Delhi for a few hours. Can we meet? And I don't know whether it was, a divine intervention or what it was, or a sign from Praveer that he's looking out for me. I spent 3.5 hours with her and her daughters, and we talked about everything under the sun, including Praveer, including, her daughter was a month younger than Stuti. So their journey, and talking about a lot of things about, things that meant a lot to us. And I think that was the divine power that engineered it, because I cannot explain. There was no way she could have been here.
Yeah.
There was no way nothing could have
uncanny,
happened.
Yeah. It's uncanny.
It's very uncanny. So that's another thing I learned through the support group. Watch out for signs. It seems, I don't talk about it to people because people will think, you're weird. You're afraid of being judged. But and I talk to Savita and I talk to Manisha about it a lot, that every time I'm a little low, or if I'm thinking, I wish, things had been different, I'll see out of the blue something of Thomas popping on my feed, Thomas the Tank Engine popping on my feed, or I'll see a feather, or I'll see a memory, or I'll see a movie that Praveer used to like. And those are all ways of that you're not. I'm not with you, but I am still with you.
There.
I'm still
right
with
there.
you. I'm still with you.
And I hear you. I feel you.
And don't think that I've left you. I am there no matter where you are in the world. I am going to be around. And they have ways of communicating that we label as people label people who talk about such things, and we don't talk about it. But there is a science to it.
Oh yes.
And if you believe, you
Yes,
believe.
I do.
And if you know, you know.
I'm a full believer of these things. So, and I completely agree with you, completely on this one. So you're saying, watch out for the signs. You also said that grief is different for everybody. You said it manifests in different ways. What else would you like to say?
Be present for, and grief is a lot of things. You could grieve. You have different kinds of
You
grief.
were saying something like people, and this even another lady said here, people start comparing grief.
Exactly. It becomes a competition.
तेरा तो कुछ भी नहीं है, मेरे साथ तो ये हुआ है.
And I know someone.
छोड़ दो यार.
I know someone.
इधर तो तुम घर करो ना यार, compare. कि देखो मेरे घर पे 15 कमरे हैं, तेरे पास 4 हैं. You are loser person, don't talk to me. But not about grief, man. Not about grief.
It becomes a competition. It becomes a competition, and this is usually done by the people who haven't experienced grief from close quarters.
Always.
This is always the case. And and the other thing is that please normalize talking about grief. Please normalize talking about your vulnerabilities. It's not a sign of weakness.
It's a sign of
It's actually a powerful sign to be talking about your vulnerability. And it's okay. It's okay if I'm sensitive. It's okay if I'm sad. It's okay. Just be there for me. Be there for the people who need you. And it's not just grief. Be there for someone who's at a low. It's all kinds of
all
things.
emotions.
All emotions.
All circumstances. Circumstances are going to cause emotions, and those will again cause circumstances. So that is the fourth thing. Anything else before we close, Deepa? And may I please also compliment you on this super confident person that you are. I love the way your voice, you have a petite frame, and from there, and the place that you're, please, I said it in the best way possible.
I know.
And the place that you're coming from, you are a tigress. I can feel that, so thank you. I learned a lot from you.
I think it's only in the last 6 months that I have become the person that I am. And I'd lost myself in 1990 when my father fell sick, and when you're not married and you're still in your 20s, and your father is sick and he means the world to you, it shatters your confidence. And I think it's only in the last 6 months or so where I have kind of started rediscovering myself, and I don't know how it happened. It just happened magically. I guess it's also the kind of friends I have. I have an empowering tribe around me, to be honest. Some of them are here, and those who could not be here, I know are there with me in mind and spirit. My support group, and then I'm part of a book club where, yesterday all of them said, you can do it, Deepa. I was, obviously, you're nervous because you're talking about your fragile, emotional self to people that you haven't met. And so they were saying, if I know someone who can do it, you can do it. And and Jayanti Pandey was like, you know what, you've been ready for a long time. You're doing it now. And the reason
I felt that even I felt that it's just giving you the platform.
So the reason for me for doing this was, one, to let people know that talking about grief is not a taboo topic. You need to let them talk and process their emotions, because if you bottle it up inside, it's going to cause a lot of mental,
it has a rippling effect.
It does cause mental imbalance, to be honest.
It does.
And the other thing is that for people to realize that it's okay to talk about grief. It's absolutely okay. Let them talk. They consider you a friend, they consider you a well-wisher, and that's why they're talking to you. So you need to listen to them. And listen to them without telling them anything. Be present, be present. And talk about your emotions often. Talk about, if you're afraid, say you're afraid. It's okay.
Yes. Yes.
And for a person who's very early on in the grief journey, and it's not just child loss. You could have lost your spouse, or you could have lost your parent, you could have lost anyone. Take 1 second at a time. Take 1 moment at a time. Take 1 minute at a time, and take a day at a time and an hour at a time. Because if you start thinking about what will happen later on, which I did until about 6 months back, it used to overwhelm me, and my family bore the brunt of it, right? Because you have to manifest it somewhere, and it's not fair to them, to be honest. When I look back,
I would just like to say something here, and then we will close that. May I just request you, because like I said, they've been part of the journey with you. Please don't take it totally on yourself also. That I'm sure even his grief was manifested in a certain way. What I'm trying to say is, please don't single yourself out by saying, I did that. I think that's a woman thing, it's a mother thing. Please don't, Deepa.
Sure.
You are much above this. I'm sure all of you were together in it and were manifesting in different ways, and you've come out together.
Yeah.
That's all. Please.
We have. And there's an acceptance now that and he was also staying in a different place. So we don't communicate about such things, our vulnerabilities, when you are in two different physical locations.
That happens.
And now that we are together, and to be honest, I would not be talking like this had it not been for him, and he would not be where he is had it not been for me.
Yeah.
So it takes it's a total tango. So
do you tango?
No, I'm not a dancer.
salsa ballroom dance एक बार कर लो यार. नहीं who cares yaar? Feet will dance. All right,
thanks a lot, because it's
my pleasure.
For this, because it's helped me process my own grief, which I had not done in a very long time.
Thank you. Thank you so much. That means a lot. Thank you everybody.